I'm Colonel Mike Ziegelhofer, West Point class of 2004, from the Death Dealers of the 1st of the 67th Armored Regiment, coming from the land of the morning call. We say, go Army!
Beat Navy!
Go Army!
Beat Navy!
Well, our good friend Joshua's going to like that. Time to welcome in the Lowebros from Southern California. Jacob from Navy, Joshua from Army. Of course, got Randy Cross down there to help with this. I've been looking forward to this, guys, all week long. I'm going to ask the question that everybody's asked. How did you guys end up at separate academies? What was the decision process like? We'll start with you, Jacob.
So really, it was a long process. I mean, like, just looking at the careers after, it's like for me, I want to fly jets. For my brother, he was looking at more of the Army branches to see what they had to offer. But a lot went into it. So just definitely careers after for that.
How big is the rivalry between you two individually?
Oh, yes, sir. It's pretty big. I mean, going back to high school, you know, we ran cross country together, we ran track and field. So, yes, like, the rivalry is pretty big. Even, like, now at the academies, it's, like, so much more. Just, like, the fact that he's in Navy, the fact that I'm in Army, it's a huge rivalry, sir.
We're always taking digs at each other. So.
I love it. Nothing better.
Brent, we're talking about identical twins.
Yes, sir.
From Mission Viejo, California. One ends up in Annapolis, one ends up in West Point. The odds of that happening, guys, have got to be pretty remote. How big of rivals were you guys growing up as brothers?
I mean, we would always compete against each other, whether it was like in the classroom, like on the track, really anything. It was always a competition of like who could be better, who could be a better twin. Essentially, we were always going at it. So I think no matter what it was, we were always like going against each other.
And just having that competition, like having him always there to push me to be better, like that was great because it pushed me to be better and it pushed him to be better.
What's it been like spending time at West Point?
I think this whole exchange program, like, it's been a really great time. I mean, at first I was a little bit out of my element, kind of thinking like, okay, like, should I have just stayed at Navy for the semester? But then this guy came over and he's like, hey, like, I'm gonna help you out. Like, I'll make sure, like, here's what you need to do in order to get squared away. I've met a lot of great people and it's been a great experience in I-2.
Talking about the prisoner exchange, of course, which they do every year.
Talk a little bit about that prisoner exchange and exactly what that is.
Yes, sir. So it's been a tradition at the Army-Navy game almost since it's been a thing. So you have obviously the 7 cadets who have been at West Point, the 7 midshipmen who have been at West Point, the 7 cadets who have been at Navy. Obviously, they go up to the field, the brigade commander from Navy, and then the first captain from West Point, shake hands, and then they do a facing movement. They have a message on the back of their jerseys, and then the cadets and midshipmen return to their separate schools to watch the game with them.
All right, so who's got the tougher daily schedule? Like, whose life is tougher?
Oh, I mean, that's not even a question. I say for me, certainly for me. I mean, having to deal in this, like, with being this whole Army environment, like, it's been a lot of work, but I've really made it work. So, I mean, compared to him,
I mean, I gotta say, let me just say, like, the fact is West Point has more military training, more physical. People are way more physically fit at West Point. I would say by far West Point and the Army itself is a much more challenging experience than the Navy.
I like it.
Debatable.
It's debatable.
Let's talk about the people that should get a lot more credit, your parents. Go ahead, both of you.
Yeah, so like basically like our parents, I mean, like they've always been there for us. Like my dad been very like practical, always like telling me like, look, you got a problem, like you got to go over it, you got to solve it yourself, like give it like your best effort. And like my mom, she's been always like very understanding, like very empathetic, whether it was having a bad day, whether it was like plebe year, like had a bad test, like didn't do well like on a physical fitness test, like she would always be there for me and always supporting us. So
who are your parents? Who do they like better? Who are they rooting for today?
So it's kind of funny you asked that, sir. Obviously one of them roots for Army, one of them roots for Navy, then each year they flip-flop. So it's not just one school. I mean, obviously Army is the better school. Obviously they got to root for Army. Well, but they got to support Jacob too.
We know at the end of the day they're really rooting for Navy. I mean, not even a contest.
All right, I don't think I need to ask who they're predicting to win the game. Time once again to check in with Tina, who has a special guest. Tina?